is June 4th. It is a Thursday. Joining me is Chris Stonecker. Chris, we just put wraps on day one for the Equity Amid Crisis Conference. It was quite good, a great cross-section of the community, some really good conversations, some breakout rooms so we could kind of vary how the information flowed, and a lot of good two-way conversation as well. So enjoyed day one. Looking forward to day two tomorrow.
Yeah, boy, I did too, Joe. And I appreciate everybody who joined the conference. I think they had over 350 folks, or 360 or 70 folks at one point. We've come a long way, right? Now we can assemble folks throughout the community on that platform. So I thought the platform worked well, but the words that were spoken by so many different folks in our community that had a common thread of, our hearts are hurting and we want to listen and learn. And that's what I heard loud and clear throughout. There's still time. So if you're watching this and you want to know what we're talking about, the Equity Amid Crisis conversation that our St. Pete, Pinellas County communities had, there's still one more day of it. We go back live tomorrow starting at noon. So if you want to be part of it, just find it on, we'll put a link into this article and you can still register for it. They've opened up more registration. So it was a very meaningful day.
LLC.
Yeah. So it's been a meaningful day and it's a good day. But as I start off every one of these conversations with you, do you mind if I share my screen and just show you the numbers really quick? Again, Joe, what I'm worried about is we are starting to see what I would perceive as just a lot of folks still getting sick. We are now back up to over 20 cases per day. I know this is a 14-day average of it, but it's a daily average. It's getting to that high point again. I'm just, getting a little nervous because now we've got two of our four gates being red, they're increasing in value. We know this. It popped up on Monday. That's our weekly percentage. So we won't see any change in that till next Monday, but we have certainly seen that go back up again overnight. And here's those numbers. So this is the numbers I just showed you. So you can see, like, when we were at our peak and when we opened back up down here, it made sense to open back up because we were getting way low at almost 10 cases. Our hospitals were doing it. But then as we opened back up, I would just, and I'm the Chamber of Commerce guy, so I want to stay open, but I'm just getting nervous that we didn't bring it back down. And now we're teetering around this number. So I think the real, question is, first of all, it's not over yet. So that's what I really want to make sure people understand, but also is how are our hospitals doing? The last thing I would just show you as part of that is every day I show you guys these daily numbers. So yesterday, 1,900 people were tested, which is a lot of people. And I'm so excited for that. That was one of our goals, but we almost got 2% of those as positives. But why that number is so high each time is, look, we're getting 36, 23, 23, 20, 31, 22. This is past when we opened. Prior to us opening, we were getting these 9, 11, 7, 10 numbers. So we've kind of, since we've opened, I'm not the medical doctor here, but I'm saying we've doubled the amount of people we're seeing each day. Now we're testing a lot more people, but there's a volume there. And that's what you heard Dr. Cho yesterday mention, is just watch the volume. I pulled our numbers for today for the volume of hospital beds as well. And it's gone down a little bit. Now, it hasn't gone down because of COVID as much as the hospitals are using those beds, but we're still at the number they wanted to be at, a quarter of our beds available and 20% of our ICU beds. But we aren't trending wide open yet. So this is by far not over in any form or fashion. So I hate to be the guy who keeps reminding people, but please keep wearing the mask, follow the social distancing, because it's important. And because we're reopening phase 2 starting tomorrow. The governor has allowed us to do that. We're waiting for the mayor and the county administrator to alert us if all the rules that the governor is allowing are going to happen. But that means our bars might be open here in St. Pete, our movie theaters, retail will go to 100%. And we're going to see a lot more people together, groups of 50. It's going from groups of 10 to 50 when we go into phase 2. So, Joe, there are a lot of changes ahead. If the mayor and county administrator go with the governor on Friday, our community has got a lot of people out there, and the numbers are still, something we all need to pay attention to.
Yeah, and if you look back at the days that are going to be dropping off of that full, those lower numbers are going to be dropping off soon. And if you look just at the last 7 days, it's pretty clear that next week we're going to be up around 22, 23 and going in that direction. So that's early indicators are it's going to get even higher.
Yeah. at least it gives me comfort. I know what's going on, so we can manage it, and that's what we were hopeful of. So, and so I appreciate that. But I'm still pretty high from our equity conference today. We were one of the sponsors of many. But what I'd love to do is bring in one of my partners at the chamber. She's on my executive committee, but she also leads the Florida Gulf Coast Jewish Family Community Services Organization, and she was part of the conference today as well. There she is. Dr. Brahm, how are you?
Excellent. Thanks very much.
Great. So, Sandra, I don't know if the rest of the world knows who you are. I know you, and Joe and I know you, but how about if we just start by introducing yourself to the Catalyst world?
All right. I'm Sandra Brahm. I'm the president and CEO of Gulf Coast Jewish Family and Community Services. I am a native of St. Louis, Missouri, though came to Pinellas County by way of Texas, where I lived for 25 years.
Great. Well, welcome. And you've been here about 5 years now and have made quite the impact on my life and our community. And so I'm so excited to finally get you here in Joe's room here to talk a little bit. But before we go much further, the organization you represent is a mouthful of words.
Yes,
and it might even be a misnomer to what you really do. But my understanding is you care for vulnerable people, but you have a pretty special model. Can you just explain your model?
Yes, we, one of the tenets, one of our values as a Jewish organization is Tikkun Olam, which means repair the world. And as we think about repairing the world, that means we cover a host of services and grounds as we seek to make our community and region a better place. So we have 6 main lines of business, including refugee resettlement services, of course, Jewish family services, and we support some 250 Holocaust survivors in the Tampa Bay region. We have elder services. We're the area agency on aging, agency to certify services for that. Children's services, foster care, and a host of other family services, employment services,
wow, so you are
mental and behavioral health.
And not just here in St. Pete, right? I mean, you've got a larger territory than I do, correct?
That's correct. While the bulk of our services are offered in about 12 counties surrounding the Tampa Bay area and Broward and Miami Broward also down in South Florida. And then we touch certain services are offered in about 40 counties in the state, but not all services, just certain services.
And you have kind of a history of caring for people because before you did this, you were with the YWCA, in fact, one of I think the largest in the country, correct?
Yes. In El Paso, Texas, it was, I guess, about 107 years old when I left it. But they were quite an interesting organization as well.
So you've been taking care of people for a long time then, right now. And so that's why I really wanted to have you in here. So you've seen a lot of the care you've had to provide folks. But before I jump to that, it looks like you're at home. So just tell me, how have you fared through all this? Are you doing all right? And you're working from home? Help me understand the last 12 weeks for you.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I've continued to go into the office about 1.5 days a week to just get a break from the environment. And since most of our workforce is working from home and spending a day a week or no days, depending on where they are in their role, it's really made it, fairly easy to sort of stay on top of things. I think the hardest part about working from home for me has been the way the meetings are scheduled. And I've been urging everyone to schedule 45-minute meetings instead of 1-hour meetings, because these meetings are back to back to back to back, and there's no time to get a drink of water without going dark and missing part of the conversation. So I think it's part of the new norm, if you want to say that, to think in terms of 45-minute meetings to ensure that there's some time for a breather between these online sessions.
Yeah, it is. It's been fast and furious, and you're on my executive committee. You're on the board as well. So coupled with just your responsibilities at your organization, you're taking on a lot of my responsibilities as well. So, but let's get for your employees too, before we just get into other parts of this conversation, serving, you're caring for the vulnerable. How has your employees shifted? I mean, like, what has the shift been? Like, what have you guys learned about how you operate, having to do it the way you're doing it now?
It's funny that you asked that because our executive team had been meeting for months about a remote work policy that we could not move forward because we have, a handful of employees that absolutely can work from home and should work from home and not have at least space to go and pick up a file. But we stumbled around a whole lot of conversations around liability and insurance and risk, those things that keep us caught up. And so
Yep.
when COVID-19 struck, thank goodness for our team. We have a great emergency management team that met weeks before we were mandated to close, and we began to put systems in place. And when the mandate came, we were ready. And some 95% of our workforce went remote. And we made our discoveries early on and shifted, but the team has really adjusted well. There are, I think right now there's a bit of fatigue. And while, half the workforce is still afraid to come back to the office because of COVID-19. And of course, you look at the news and you see the unrest around the country and, there's concerns about what's going to happen in our community. But the rest are ready to come back to some sense of normalcy, be that coming in 2 to 3 days a week and working remote 2 to 3 days a week so that we can stagger the workforce. But they're all essential workers. And so they are on the front lines, caring for the elderly, the vulnerable, caring for children, taking children to meet with, foster parents, et cetera.
So do you, and I'm going to move on from this, but do you see in the future that you all are going to look at real estate different for your organization? I mean, are you guys, would you use space differently going forward?
I think our board has been pretty sharp in just historically. We don't own a lot of property as large as we are. So we own our headquarters building and we have a few residential facilities, but we've primarily been in the leasing business. With that, I mean, there may be the opportunity to downsize space a little bit down the road. However, we're probably always going to need those offices because everyone can't work from home.
Great. I understand. I appreciate it. We're going to be doing some shows about just real estate itself. And I'm just curious of what it's all going to mean for how we all use space, who needs space and why, and maybe we all just rent space very quickly for all of ours, and we don't actually have a picture on the desk anymore because we're just there for a couple hours each day or whatever. So
that feels about right. And you might even be able to get into a shared lease with folks where, I use it on Tuesday and Thursday and you use it on Monday and Wednesday.
Yeah. Gotcha. So we also shared a couple hours together today on the Equity Amid Crisis conference that was online today throughout Pinellas County. What did you think?
I thought the panelists were exceptional. I thought it was very well put together. I was shocked that there were some 400 people on a Zoom call and you could see most of their faces. That was quite fascinating, but the subject was timely. This was being planned, as you know, some months ago before COVID, and it shifted and was just perfect for the conversation that we're having about equity, about opportunity, which is really the brunt of what has, driven people to the streets, not just the recent deaths of George Floyd and other acts of racism, but just the years of inequity and being locked in and really being fed up.
And so, so how do you communicate with your employees or those closest to you of how this is affecting you? Like, How do you describe it to yourself, to others about yourself and what you're going through?
Well, it's easy to do things for other people. It's a little harder to do it for yourself. And so while I have worked with the chamber and other organizations to think about what is the statement and what are we saying, when it comes to my own personal experiences and views, I've struggled to write that because that's telling a very personal story. However, in communicating with my workforce, I affirmed their right, to protest, but also told them if you're doing that, you must obey the law and the consequences of not obeying the law. Because I think people in the heat of a moment or in the passion of unity forget that if there is a curfew, you must obey that curfew. And if you're working in child welfare, in any sort of human services organization, and you're arrested, it could cost you your job.
Yeah, and I'm hopeful that we're somewhat behind that part of the violence. Hopefully, but we're seeing still. Last night we had some of that, so I hope that message gets across. I think everybody shares that message. That I'd hate to see people ruin their lives because of just the pure anguish they're under right now. But it's not going to get better if you get arrested. I just worry about people getting arrested, and it's not helpful to anybody's future. So I appreciate that part of it, but you've helped me throughout this. Even when I came to you a couple of days ago and said, Sandra, what should a Chamber of Commerce do and don't do for this? Because I don't want to appear that I don't know what to do, but I also don't want to assume that I know what to do. So you helped me through this, and Joe and I are sitting here trying to listen and learn about what we can do. And you have some good advice for me every once in a while on this. And what can a guy like Chris Stonacker or Joe Hamilton do to be part of the progress that we need to make in this? Like, how should what can I do?
The first thing you can do, and I will say any person and persons who are not of color, the first thing you can do is to accept that people's experiences are their experiences, and those are real. It doesn't matter how challenged you may feel to say, "Oh, wow, is it really possible that happened?" I think what we've seen unfolding publicly, thanks to video, is showing, yes, not only is it possible, but what's happening when the cameras are off is the big question. And so the first thing is to accept that it's real. The second thing is to listen and try to understand and not try to equate what people of color are experiencing with what women are experiencing and what the GLBTQ community is experiencing. There are aligning messages and all of that, and everyone has a story to tell. In this moment of injustice, this injustice and this frustration and anger is because of 400 years of inequality that has yet to be realized because of systemic racism. And so you have to accept that it is real. And then you have to do all you can to learn about inequality, to learn about what it means to live in your skin versus my skin, and to come into this understanding that no one is here to blame you. I think there is a tendency of non-persons of color to feel like the blame is being put on them, and it's like, solve the world. You're the cause of my problem. What can I do to fix it? I didn't hold slaves. You hear that kind of thing.
Right.
And it's not about blaming. It's about understanding. I think I can't speak for everyone, but I myself would say, I want you to understand. I want you to try to understand. And I want you to commit to educating yourself and accepting that my experiences are real and they're not made up in my mind. And what I feel is what I feel, and it may not have been your intent, but we're not going to blame. We've got to get in the same room and we've got to listen.
I love it. So we'll accept the realities. We're going to listen for understanding, and we're going to learn. And that's what you've helped me with, and not just through these last few days, but through our time together. But so then,
let me add, Chris, and then you're going to act, and you're going to act where you can. And when I say where you can, you may not be able to go and make a change over in this part of the world, but you can make a change in your business. You can seek to understand your HR systems that disproportionately affect African Americans because of code things that appear on their resume, and people immediately discriminate, and it's subtle. But if I put on my resume, perhaps, that I am a part of, the Black Leaders Coalition, there's an assumption when people see that. They assume that I'm African American, number one, and then they assume that perhaps, there's some radical element in my life. And we make these biased judgments and assumptions about people based on what we see on their resumes, and those are the kinds of things. It's act. Remove those systems. Ensure that there is a blind review when it comes to that. Being in the junior league is no different or no more community service than being in, Zeta Phi Beta sorority or Delta Sigma Theta or, the Church Women's United group, which are typically, African American led, or not led, but where you see many African American women.
I'm glad you mentioned the act part, because I'm about to get to that, because it also act where you can, or with what you can. I heard Reverend Watson Haynes, and I think it was Albert Lee in the conference today, even talk about that. Albert had a good idea of we all have SMART goals for our organizations. He made them SMARTY, I and E at the end, for inclusive and equitable. So I think, like you said, building in these systems, because bias is going to always be here in our lives. There's no way you can't not. You have a contrast on your TV screen because of that. That's what bias is contrast. But what we have created are policies that are based on bias. I mean, that we have created a country based on bias, and I think that's what we just need to understand. But we need to understand, learn it, listen, and then act. And there are things you and I can do, and it could be a small little piece or it could be a larger piece. But we have to each do something. And my understanding is if everybody did their piece, we would get peace, right? So I'm really looking forward to that. But then I asked you one other thing, and I'm going to share my screen really quick. And Joe, this is not going to be very easy to read, but I want to show you something that our chamber has put out. And we are, besides wearing the flocking mask, which I think is still important. All right, so it's a very long statement, Sandra. I'm not going to ask you to read it. And you wrote most of it along with many of our board members. We had probably, Joe, one of the most active board meetings we've ever had on Wednesday, led by Ryan Griffin and Sandra, just to have a discussion on this. These words were really important. And I have never heard so many of our board members just weigh in and really care about why and what this really means to them. You care about it in St. Pete. If you're in St. Pete, you really care about it. But Sandra, what does this mean when an organization does it? What does it mean for you to work on this for the chamber? What is this? How do we use this statement? What should people know about this statement?
Well, first off, it's important that leaders recognize their responsibility as leaders, not just in their position on the job, but what is your role in the community? And the community is looking to its leaders. This country is looking to its leaders to calm fears, to settle the masses. And so as we look to our own community, people are looking to leaders to set the tone. And so we want to set the tone to make sure that the public knows what side the community is on, the leaders are on in business. We have been here before as a nation, and we've been here before as a community, and that is before on the edge of change, on the pen of insanity, if you want to call it that. But where we've come, if we don't do this right, we're being given a chance to do it right. And if we don't do this right, I'm afraid of what the future holds for us, because this is the time. It's been time. It's beyond time. But especially now is the time to get
Now is the time. And for me, St. Pete is the place. Do you think that, so part of the other theme I heard out of today's conference was about relationships. And if I don't know you, how am I supposed to work with you? So like getting to know people, just understanding people's story and just really understanding who they are. Do you think in a city like St. Pete, where the scale is a little different than a Houston or a New York or an LA, do you think scale is in our favor here, and the tools like what the Chamber and what Catalyst and what you've been involved in, the scale of us and our willingness to come out, do you think we have a better chance than the rest? Or like you've been in other markets, just help me understand how you describe St. Pete when St. Pete's challenge to this issue.
When I think about St. Pete and we talk about scale, you have an opportunity. I think that in some ways it could be easier to make change because it's a big small town and the leaders know one another. We have leaders in the Board of Education, in City Council, elected officials who are people of color. And you have a diverse community already represented, not just of people of color, but immigrants and the LGBTQ community and persons with disabilities. You have all of the tools to have. I think the harder part is for individuals who even in a big small town, can look away and say, well, what are those people doing down there? And they're doing this without understanding the experiences of those people. And who are those people? I had a colleague that said, I'm so concerned, and she was white, is white, about my son. He's so afraid right now. Most of his friends were Black, and they're, having some difficulty going through this time. And I'm just so afraid for him. And, someone overheard that conversation as they were walking by, and it was like, your son is going to be okay. Right now, we're really trying to help everyone understand that Black men have suffered tremendously in this country when it comes to, interactions with the police. And fortunately, that is something your son will never have to experience because of the color of his skin. But I think St. Pete has the right leadership at the right time to have this conversation between the business, private sector, community leaders like Watson Haynes, like a lot of folks on our board. Our board is diverse. Everyone contributed to this statement, and that showed the commitment to change. We've got to get it right.
Boy, and we do, and I believe we have an opportunity with leaders like you, with the folks we saw in the conference today. They are our friends, they are our family. But I'm a personality type, and I want to rush to get it done. And I need everybody's help in just being helpful to me, being patient about this process so that we don't shortcut it, because I think that's what we've done every time is you put a quick patch on something and then you realize it never stuck anyway. And I think we got to get it right. I think we have a great chance to get it right in St. Pete. And Sandra, I'm looking forward to working with you on it.
You hear, Chris's energy, and we've done a good job, and always we could do better of sharing information. Things like the Equity Amid Crisis conference that we just attended. So if all of these sort of things are getting us up and getting us educated, I think that what we don't hear as much advice as I would like to is if we're up to sort of the college level, there are some people that are just, and you can hear it in Chris's voice, that are really eager to do more and be better and to learn more. And I think a lot of times they bump up against the ceiling, and I bump up against the ceiling of what else to understand. So do you have any sort of for people who are the most active and the most interested, and that have that sort of college level understanding, how to get us up to MBA and doctorate level understanding that we're missing?
What you definitely want to do is be authentic. You can't make change by saying, let me walk down, 22nd and just start meeting people and shaking hands and say, okay, I know what's going on. You've got to be authentic. And authenticity means that you're willing to meet people where they are, that you're willing to invite them sincerely to where you are. And of course, getting away from, you talk about the academic education. Well, a lot of this is academic. When it comes to, theories of change, there's a lot of research out there about how to do it. What you don't want to do is rush in. And I said, quote the old movie, fools rush in. You rush in, to do a project. And then where are you? In the African-American community and communities of color, poor communities, we're used to people coming in to save the day, and oftentimes they look like you and they look like Chris. They don't look like me. And, you feel really good, about patting yourself on the back, about how great a job we've done to help those people. And that's not what it's about. So you've got to be authentic and you've got to be in it for the long haul.
Right.
And a lot of that, it sounds like, those limitations and that come from our framework. And when you talk about authentically experiencing or allowing for someone else's experience, then do you believe that starts with understanding our own framework and understanding that we may need to deconstruct that framework to be truly open to understanding that experience?
There's a book called White Fragility. That a number of people are reading right now. There's a lot of people say, well, I don't want to hear about white privilege and I don't want to hear about this. Well, you know what? If you don't want to hear about it, then you're shutting the conversation down before it even begins, because there is a privilege. And in many ways, I have privilege because of my position. We have privilege for different reasons, but I've earned my position. You didn't earn your whiteness, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that we've got to do the work, and there are some tools out there and materials to help.
Well, Joe, I appreciate that final statement, because I really do believe the best thing I can do and the best thing you can do right now is work on yourself. It's like, what are your reactions to this? How are we behaving? What are we thinking about and why? Not, and really understand that and seek to understand what's in our heads right now too, because when we are prepared and ready and at these conferences, I think we'd be better served and stable if we really understood where our biases are and what kind of, and so I appreciate that as a good first step for action of everybody, is really evaluate yourself and what values and how this all makes you feel. We just heard how it makes Sandra feel. She shared a lot of that. And we need to have more conversation with everybody about how they feel, so we can deconstruct it, so we can just support each other, because this is a journey. Well, so I got to go, but my notion is we're never going to get this right because it's never done. The universe keeps expanding, we keep growing, we keep getting better, but so we should not seek perfection, but we do have to seek understanding and love and the things that you and I know St. Pete has. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to tomorrow's conference. I'm actually going to be on one of the panels, so I look forward to being a participant as well. Sandra, thank you for just your leadership, your guidance, what you do for the Gulf Coast Family Services, Community Services Organization, and for our chamber, for our community. The last thing is, I know you didn't want to be put in this position. You and I have been talked about this, but I don't know how else to do it. So, but you did a great job. I mean, but is it awkward for people? Is it more awkward for Black women right now to get people coming up to them and talking to them in weird ways like this? I mean, is it awkward?
I wouldn't say that it's awkward.
Okay.
I think it's refreshing.
Oh, good.
And I think that it's the simple act of people letting their guards down and realizing that hey, we can have this conversation. It's refreshing.
Beautiful. Great way to end it. Thank you very much. Joe, thank you too.
Thank you.